Sea of Red, it's time for another Fireside Chat, the official podcast of Flames fans. It's go time.
Well, the Calgary Flames are coming off what might have been one of their hardest weeks of the season and somehow managed to make it out at 500. I'm Dan alongside Matt, as always. And Matt, overall thoughts on this week before we dive into the games?
I felt that the Flames were the second best team in 3 of the games and the better team in 1 of the games. So I felt that really it was just the Panthers game that they were the better team. Even though they did collect 2 points against Nashville, I didn't feel like that was their best effort either.
Well, a game that definitely wasn't their best effort was in Dallas. The Calgary Flames took on the Dallas Stars on the 8th and ended up with a 6-2 loss. Stars scored 4 straight in the third period in this one. I thought that this team, Dustin Wolf and net, didn't have his greatest night. None of the Flames did. But they just, I don't know, they looked like they weren't ready to get started in this one.
Well, they got the early goal. And then Dallas kind of ran over them the rest of the first period. Huberdeau scored a minute in and was not very good. Then Dallas scored early in the second period. The Flames kind of put it to the Stars for a good portion of the second period. Managed to tie the game late in the period. Looked like everything was good for a third period come from behind victory, and then the wheels fell off the wagon very hard and very fast.
Yeah, I mean, they came back a little bit in the second, but even then I just felt like they were maybe pushing at 80%, not 100%.
True, and it was not the best of efforts, and I felt that Wolf just had a average game. He wasn't terrible by any means, but he was just decent. Like, you know, and I don't feel that, like, even though 6 goals against, I don't feel like it was necessarily all his fault for the 6 goals against.
No, and no goaltender plays every game really well. And I think part of the learning of a young goalie is how do you have a game like that and come back the next one and look better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, definitely some learnings for Wolf as we're seeing him progress. The next game was on the 10th, Calgary and Nashville. This was their last road game of the season, and Jonathan Huberdeau scores for the second game in a row, something we don't say very often. Actually gets 2 points in this one as the Flames defeat the Predators 4-3 in regulation. What were your thoughts on this one?
Again, it was a bit of a sloppy first period. The Predators went to the intermission up 2-1. Everything kind of looked like a typical Nashville game, and then the Flames pretty much took the game over in the second period, scoring 3 goals, including the late game-winning goal by Huberdeau on the power play with 1:19 left in the second period, and then kind of coasted the rest of the way, guiding the game to 3. And to me, like, if this had been any other team than Nashville, I think the Flames lose this game. But Nashville has all sorts of problems, and frankly, I'm surprised that they haven't made like a coaching change because like they're just, circling the drain right at this point.
You and I weren't sure going into this one how the Flames would do because of some of their history against Nashville. And even, after that first period, I still thought the Flames may not end up with the victory here.
No, and they just struggled mightily at times in this game, but kind of found a way to score goals. And I think it was more Nashville being bad than Calgary being good that ended up.
Well, even the fact that Calgary didn't look like they were ready to go, in my opinion, in the first, I think shows a lot about, Calgary needed some time to get into this. Nashville just being so bad wasn't able to take advantage of that, where a lot of other teams would have been able to.
Yeah, and it's curious to see how, like, normally, like, when you have a team that adds a handful of excellent players, it takes a bit for them to figure things out. But, we're getting into the middle of December and Nashville is just as bad as they were from basically game 1 of the season. And, it's one of those where I think something to kick the team in the butt, like a coaching change, is definitely warranted for this team.
Coaching change would be the easy one to do.
Yeah, because it's not like you can trade off everybody. And, like I heard some comments about the Lightning looking smarter than ever for letting Stamkos walk. And frankly, with how Stamkos has played as a Predator, with every passing game, their decision to move on from him looks better and better with each day. Like he looks, frankly, as bad, if not worse, than the transition from Huberdeau from Florida to here, which is saying quite a lot.
Flames battled back 3 times in this one to get back on the score sheet. Like you said, Nashville not looking great, but the fact that Nashville pinned you down and made you do that 3 times tells you that, even though the Flames are good and can do that, there needs to be, I don't know if it's more discipline or what it is, but you can't get yourself in that position with Nashville.
No, and like a team that's on the bottom of the standings, like you should be able to hold them at bay, and that really was not the case for most of the game.
But you know what? A win's a win, and the Flames needed the win, so that's a good thing they got it there. Just a note, Ryan Lomberg was not on this road trip, those 2 games, as he and his wife were expecting, so he was in Calgary. Calgary's next game was back in the Saddledome, taking on the Lightning, and I expected this might be a high-scoring Lightning game. I didn't expect it to end up being 8-3.
Yeah, this is one of those confluences where you have a good player having a good game and the defense of the other team having probably their worst game of the season. And like literally every defenseman on the Flames deserves an F in this game. And Kucherov getting 6 points, Gensel getting a hat trick, Point with 4 points. Yeah. This is one of those efforts where I felt bad for Vladar because I felt that he was trying his best, but when you're getting literally zero help from anybody else, it's hard.
I can remember last time a coach left their goalie in to get shelled for 8.
True.
I was really surprised that Wolf didn't get the net at some point. And I think with both these guys, while we're teaching them to be starters, they have to know how to come in relief in a scenario like this too. And I felt really bad for Dan Vladar for being kept in there.
Yeah, I think that it was just a little too late in the game. Like when with the 2 back-to-back goals in the third period at the 11:34 and the 13:24 mark, that it was too late. Like once it got 6-3 and then quickly 7-3, like you might as well just let Vladar finish.
But even
it
at
off.
6, I mean, most time they yank a goalie at 3 or 4.
True, but I think because of the fact the Flames were close, like it was 4-3. Like if they had replaced him, like when it was 4-1 for Tampa, that would have been the time to make sense to make the goalie change. But you didn't do it at that point, so the ship kind of sailed at that point, and yeah, it is what it is. Like the Flames, pretty much everybody on the team deserved an F in this game, and these things happen. So.
I mean, I guess we can say good that they got, 3 goals out of this one, but yeah, this is by far, I think, the Flames' worst effort. Not just the defense. Like, I thought the whole team, even the forwards, yeah, they were doing well, but I thought that they just weren't, they weren't pushing the way I expected them to, and there's no way you were going to outscore this as the score got where it needed to be, but it just felt like everybody. So like we were talking about the Dallas game, it just felt like maybe they were running at 80%.
Yeah, well, even in the first period, like the Flames, I felt were doing fairly well in the first period overall, but then the boneheaded play by Huberdeau at the blue line, turning it over to Kucherov for a breakaway. To result in the tie score after one period. Like it might have been a different game had the team been up 1-0 after one, but then the wheels quickly fell off the wagon, much like Dallas in the third period. And yeah, it's hard to recover
that's kind of what I mean
that.
by going at 80%. Like their hockey sense didn't seem to be there. They didn't seem to, really kind of be thinking through what they were doing. And maybe they were getting intimidated by the Lightning because the Lightning were doing a lot of things very quickly that I don't think Calgary was used to, and on them very quickly, making them make tough decisions. But the Flames just looked overwhelmed to me for most of this one.
Yes, I agree.
And not what you need if you think you're a competitive team. Let's be honest, these guys aren't going to the Stanley Cup Finals, but if they, if you're going to go deep, you're going to take on the Lightning again. You got to be able to be somewhat competitive.
Yeah, and it's hard when, and frankly, like every team has a game where like literally everything goes wrong. It just, there's not much you can do. It's one of those where like even like the game tape, you kind of just throw that out the window. Say, well, that happened, let's reset and carry on. And because I think like every team pretty much has like one stinker a year guaranteed, and like unless you're like the worst team in the NHL, like you're usually limited to one like absolutely terrible game.
Yeah, one or two. Generally, I find every team gets kind of blown out and then they blow somebody out.
Yes. So, and this one seemed to be our version of that bad game, and you just kind of carry on and come back the next game.
Well, from that perspective, I'm glad we got it done early. I wasn't sure what to expect in the Florida game, mostly because after that game, I in my head, I thought, oh crap, the Flames are going to get down on themselves. The Flames are going to be not ready to play. The Flames are going to look terrible again. And I was pleasantly surprised. Dustin Wolf got his second career shutout, made 32 saves as the Flames beat the Panthers 3-0. This was also kind of interesting, but Mackenzie Weegar's 500th game in this one against his former team. Much better outing in this. I think we can all say that. Yes, and I have to say that might have been the worst game I've seen the Florida Panthers play in years. It looked like they were on a pregame skate for the whole game. Like that, I didn't really feel much intensity from them at any point in the contest. It's almost like they were taking the Flames role from the game before.
Exactly, and like other than the Bennett breakaway in the third period, like there was not really too many scoring chances by the Panthers where I felt that Wolf had to make a bunch of good saves up until like the last 2 minutes of the game. And frankly, I felt that the Panthers kind of made Wolf get an easy shutout, which is saying a lot considering how good the Panthers actually are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Flames definitely were not taking on the Panthers at full strength. If they were, this would not have been anywhere close to a 3-0 game. But sort of like we were saying against the Nashville game, you've got to kind of take the wins where you can get them. And I'm hoping that if nothing else, this will be a good momentum boost for the players.
I agree.
Also noting here, I thought, and I just wanted to note this, Jakob Pelletier, we'll talk more about Pelletier and Duehr a little bit later, but he played 13 minutes, just over 13 minutes in this game, played in the top 9. I thought for Pelletier, his best goal since his recall.
Yeah, I felt
best game, I should say, yeah.
Yeah, I felt that this was probably one of his like top 3 or 4 games that he's had in the NHL period. And he was very noticeable in terms of generating chances off the forecheck, and frankly, like he was a little energy bug throughout the contest, and that's the way he needs to play. Like he can't play a passive game, which was why he got sent down in the first place. Like he needs to be going at 100% in order for the team to want to have him here, and it's good to see him giving that kind of an effort because if he does that, he will stick in the NHL. It's just we have to see this on a consistent basis. I think with him, I mean, he didn't get a point in this one. He played, like I said, 13 minutes 18 seconds, no point. But I think that Pelletier needs to learn how to play without the puck, and I think that's what we're seeing here. I think he's learning how to play an energy game. He's learning how to contribute when the puck's not on his stick. And I think, especially for a small guy, those are some of the things that sometimes you don't
have coming into the NHL and need that refinement.
I agree.
Well, looking at where the Flames are at after that, then they now sit just outside the Western Conference wildcard spot. They're at 35 points. The wildcard teams are Colorado at 36 and Vancouver at 35. So Calgary technically tied for that wildcard, but outside the playoffs. And if we take a look at the Pacific Division, Calgary, like we said, 35. Edmonton is above them now at 38. Vancouver tied with the Flames for fourth. And then LA 39, Vegas 41, and right behind the Flames is Seattle at 32. So outside, but still, I mean, within striking distance, right? The Flames are outside technically because they have 35 points in 31 games, where Vancouver has 35 and 29. So, you know, I don't think anything for these guys to be worried about if they're looking ahead to the playoff spot and thinking they're still in it.
Yeah, frankly, though, like on the opposite side of the coin, there's only 4 points separating them from being where they're at now and being a bottom 10 team for those that are concerned about the Montreal draft pick trade thing. So realistically, like if the Flames continue to be waffling like they have been over the last few weeks, for fans that are more concerned about the draft pick than the playoff point of view, like the Flames would probably fall into that category fairly quickly if they can't keep it up.
We'll see. We'll talk more about the draft when we get to the new year. I think that there's still some time before we probably want to get there and talk about that. But from what I've been seeing, a lot of people saying that, you know what, this is one of the weaker draft classes that we've seen in a few years. So from that, I'm not too worried about maybe giving up that bottom pick. I think the Flames are going to try and do something playoff-wise. This might be the year to do it. You know, I think on a weak draft year, and maybe someone who knows the draft better than I've been looking at so far, I'll dig more into in the new year. I think it's hard to sometimes look at junior guys in the first half of the season and really assess them, but it doesn't look like it's going to be all that great of a draft. So maybe this is the year to drop that pick. But let's talk a little bit about guys on the roster instead of the draft. We've talked a little bit about Pelletier. We know that Pelletier and Duehr were the two call-ups. Technically, Devin Cooley got called up. Didn't play, didn't expect him to play, but he got called up for the Tampa Bay game. But what do you think of Pelletier and Duehr in their recall this week?
I think they have been two of the better players overall on the Flames. And the youthful enthusiasm, I think, has helped the team overall. And I also have to give a quick shout out to Blake Coleman. I think he's turning the corner to being himself again, which is a good thing. But as for Pelletier and Duehr, I feel that like they're doing the right things on the ice in terms of, you know, being, you know, the good forechecking wingers that they need to be, and they're both been making decent plays to at least attempt to generate offense. Their line mate's not necessarily picking up what they're throwing down, but I felt that Pelletier with Zari in the last game was a good combination, and I felt that that line contributed quite a bit offensively, even though... So that
third line was Sharangovich on the left, Zari at center, and then Pelletier on the right. Yeah,
and I felt that they were always around the net and generating chances. They didn't necessarily translate to a ton of offense on the score sheet, but you know, they were right there on a number of occasions.
We've seen again this week that Pelletier and Duehr have been in the lineup more often than not, and Kuzmenko scratched. I know that our friend Kevin Olenek suggested putting him on waivers. We've talked about some of the financial challenges of doing that, but I think the Flames still need NHL bodies. But right now, I mean, looking at this, I don't think that Pelletier and Duehr will get sent down at the end of their 10 games or 30 days before they clear waivers. I think these guys now have earned a spot someone's going to have to take from them, unless Kuzmenko can take that.
Yeah, and technically, like the Flames today sent all three of them back down, but on Tuesday they will recall them all just for waiver shenanigans.
All right, so let's talk about this, because I've seen a lot of people online, because this happened a couple times this week. They've been playing the hokey pokey with these guys. Put all your call-ups in, put all your call-ups out, put all your call-ups in, shake them all about, that sort of thing. The reason this is happening, when you're recalled, players can stay on the active roster for 30 days, not 30 days consecutive, but 30 days, I believe, or 10 games. So the Flames are simply sending these guys up and down to not take another day. If you send them down, and technically the recall was last night, so they're sending them down so they get a few more days out of them, which, especially when the team's in Calgary, is very smart.
Yeah, and especially with the holiday season and like the breaks between games, they're not necessarily going to, like, if they just kept them up, they wouldn't necessarily play the 10 games before the 30-day threshold came into play. So you might as well play the shenanigans in order to allow them the time to burn the 10 games before you have to make the decision.
Yeah, I mean, technically there's a Wranglers game on December 15th on Monday. I don't think either one of them plays, even though they'll probably technically be Wranglers at that time. But you know what? This is one of the benefits and one of the reasons why it's nice to have your farm team in the same city. You can technically report just by walking to a different place and saying, okay, I'm here, and, you know, get a little bit more out of those call-ups. So when you're seeing guys sent up, sent down like this, it's not as though, hey, they're not playing well. It's all just cap management.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, you're right.
Good chicanery by Conroy to, manufacture as much of that waiver eligibility window as possible.
Exactly. Stretch out how long you can keep these guys here, because if you do need to make a hard decision, if, let's say, you do want to send Pelletier down, I'm not convinced he clears twice in 1 year. Like, I think he will probably get taken if he's placed on waivers. So
and especially with how good he's been playing since he's been
exactly
up here.
Why, yeah.
And I think the same with Duehr, that you just keep them up here as long as possible. And you probably at some point will send them, one or both of them, back down until like the trade deadline. But you might as well stretch the time that you have them here for as long as possible before having to, make that decision one way or the other.
Yeah, and that 1 or 2 days here or there, it's just all a paper transaction. So fans, if you're seeing this during the next week, still this up and down for these players, it's not as though they've been demoted. Conroy's just, I would say, playing within the rules, even though it's kind of odd. But yeah, it's one of the benefits of having your team here. I mean, if you had to report all the way to Stockton, it'd be a lot harder to do that. But you know what?
Yeah, here, go fly down to California and then hop on a plane, come right back.
Pretty much, drive to the rink, tag up, and then come back. Like in this case, it's, go talk somebody over in that room and go home. And, home is the same place. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if these guys stick around, but good for them for the organization, I should say, for doing this and getting a little bit more out of it. But I think both those guys, I mean, we talked about Walker Duehr last year not looking like an NHLer, and I think he just needed to go maybe get his confidence in the AHL. I think as a fourth line guy, I think he's the right fit on that fourth line now. We've tried a few different call-ups. They've tried Klapka. They've tried a few people. I think Walker Duehr is the right fit with Lomberg and Rooney on line 4.
Yes, I agree.
And hopefully, at least for this year. I mean, who knows what happens next year, but I think as long as he keeps going the way that he is, he stays, and I think Pelletier stays.
Yeah, and frankly, like, he's bringing a lot of the similar type of game that Kirkland was before he got hurt, generating some offense and playing responsible and physically as well, so that way everybody on that fourth line is driving in the same direction still, like they were before.
Yep. You mentioned Blake Coleman earlier and how he's been looking good this week. I think he definitely needs to be called out for looking better. Another guy I wanted to talk about was Nazem Kadri. He seems to have turned things around as well. I don't know if it's the rumored trade talks or what's going on, but I've noticed Kadri doing a lot more of the things I think made him the top player he was this week. I mean, we saw some great turnovers. We've seen some good goals. I think Kadri is looking more like that veteran leader, the guy that, could be. I mean, if we look at the stats right now, Huberdeau is the Flames point leader at 21. Kadri right behind him at 20. Like, I don't know about you, but it seems to me like Nazem Kadri's had a really good week, and I'm hoping it continues.
Yeah, and he seems to be bouncing back with a pair of highlight reel goals in the Tampa and Florida game. And it's one of those where, like, if he has, quietly asked for a trade or whatever because of all those rumors that have come up of late, he's putting enough of a show on the ice to say, hey, I still got it if you want. So, and if not, like, he's providing a lot of leadership for the rest of the team. So either way,
could also be the other way too, where there's rumors being traded. I don't want to leave this market, so I'm going to show these guys they got to keep me.
I agree.
We don't know. We haven't talked to Kadri. We've heard the same rumors probably everybody else has. We try not to comment a lot on rumors, so we won't get too much into that. But I don't know what's turned around there, but he's looking good. And, Matt, going back to the stat sheet here, if I were to have told you after 31 games, the Flames point leader would be Jonathan Huberdeau this season, would you believe me?
Yeah.
After
I just would not have expected that number to be 21. And then
okay,
I'd be like,
let's put it differently.
Sense.
Would you have believed me that Jonathan Huberdeau was the points leader and the Flames were within striking distance of a playoff spot?
I would have, not been entirely surprised, because I think if Huberdeau had played like Huberdeau previous, then, the Flames and a playoff spot are not out of reach. But, him basically being a slightly less point-getting version of himself from last year even, and the Flames being close to a playoff spot is a little bit on the bizarre side of things.
Because I could have kind of seen, Huberdeau's the top point getter, but that means like nobody else has points.
Yeah, like realistically, like if you had said like after 31 games that the leading point getter for the Flames has 21 points, I'd be like, okay, are the Flames the worst, second worst, or third worst team in the NHL? Not like tied for a playoff spot. So yeah, it's been a weird season, frankly.
It has, for sure, yeah, and I think it's going to continue. I mean, we're not quite at the 40 game mark yet, so we won't look at our predictions again, as we often do when we get to that halfway point. But so far, yeah, it's been an interesting season, an interesting 2024, but also I'd say more exciting for Flames fans than I think we thought it was going to be.
Oh, for sure. And it's nice to see that for most games that the Flames are throwing their best effort out there, even if they come short on the score sheet.
I've said going into this year, even if you aren't good, and Conroy said it too, I've always been on this anti-tank bandwagon. You've still got to put in the effort.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where teams tend to get stuck in their like 8, 10, 12, 15-year rebuilds. Like Buffalo is currently, or Florida, for like from like 2001 all the way through up until like 3 or 4 years ago. It's you need to know how it is to actually win games at the NHL level, and it's as important as getting all of those good pieces. And like, are the Flames going to likely finish in the bottom 8 or 9? Definitely. I think that they will. But, learning the good habits and, being more assertive on the ice, like you see that like pretty much every night, the guys that are doing the best are the young players on the team. Like Connor Zary and Matthew Coronado are leading the team. And feel like a guy like Pelletier has come in and shown very well as well in terms of effort levels. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more when we look ahead to 2025 and through 2025, but it gives me some hope and some excitement as we move into close to the new year of going, okay, this team's not totally the dumpster fire that it could have been.
Yeah, we're not Chicago.
Very true. Let's take a little bit of a left turn on this conversation. Zane Parekh, the Calgary Flames' #1 pick in this last draft, drafted number 9 overall in 2024. You and I were watching that at Bow River Brewing with our friends there and a bunch of our listeners who showed up for the live show. Surprised a lot of people by not being named to the Team Canada World Junior roster this year. The defensemen named were Andrew Gibson, Sam Dickinson, Caden Price, Oliver Bonk, Tanner Molendyke, Sawyer Mino, Bo Aki, and Matthew Schaefer, but no Zane Parekh, which it's not like he's having a bad year. He's got 45 points in 26 games already. Last year he had 35 points in 26 games. Last year he had 96 points in 66, so on point to do similar numbers. Any thoughts as to why you think he's not in there, or what you think this might mean for him as a player?
Well, it is technically a age 19 tournament, and Parekh is 18. I think.
Well, it's U19, right? So it's 19 and under.
Yes, but like that's about the only reason why I feel that they are going a different direction, and frankly, like unless Canada wins the gold medal at this tournament, like the management and coaching staff of Team Canada will quickly get the label of moron put on them for leaving off, guys like Beckett Seneke, Carter Yakimchuk, Zane Parekh off of their team when, like if they don't end up walking away with the gold medal.
Yeah, I agree.
Because to me, looking at the roster, I don't feel that Canada took its best players. And like even if you look at the players that they left off of the roster, honestly, that might be as good, if not better, than Canada won, so to speak.
Yeah, there's definitely some odd choices that were made, and I would love to hear right from Canada why they were made or not made from Team Canada. I don't know. The only thing I can think of is there was that fan incident earlier this year from Zane Parekh where he, some altercation. There was no further discipline, but I wonder if that might have had something to do with it. I hope not, because there's really no other discipline. I could see it if he was suspended for like 10 games or something, not wanting to represent your country. But yeah, I don't know. It's a very confusing. It's a confusing choice to me, and I'm hoping it might just make Parekh work harder to show more that he can do this.
Yeah, well, and like say like with Beckett Seneke, like when he first found out he was left off of the camp roster, like the next day he had 6 points in his next game, and there's nothing more than getting snubbed to motivate you to show them that like, hey, you didn't make a good decision here.
Yeah, and you're right. I didn't think of it the way you said it, but yeah, if Canada doesn't win gold, there's always going to be that question of why and what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And why do we do this? Or this was a dumb decision, especially if those guys go on to, the NHL and do amazing things.
Yeah.
Who's the general manager of that team?
I do not remember.
I don't even know.
I know Dave Cameron is the coach, but yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know either. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting tournament for those guys. I mean, in some ways, I think that for Parekh, I don't know. There's a lot more development to be had at the World Juniors. Like I think that he's developed as much as he can there, and I think there's something to be said about staying in the OHL and just dominating on your team during that tournament. But it's a nice reward for these guys. So at the NHL with the Four Nations or going to the Olympics or whatever, I think it's a great reward, and it's too bad he got snubbed on it. But in the end, I don't think it's going to change his development. I don't think it's going to change his projections. It's not like the Flames are going to say, well, he didn't go, so maybe we don't sign him next year or whatever. Like in the grand scheme of things, when we look at Parekh's career, I think this will be a blip that we'll all forget by the time he makes the NHL.
I agree.
Do you agree with that? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad and it sucks for those that watch the tournament, but
it is what it is. Yeah, like, and there's not really much you can do, and you just hope that that's the kind of a bulletin board, thing that you stick up there and, use as motivation, and, keep, use that as motivation to kick yourself in the butt to do even better and, make them seem even more foolish with each passing game type of thing.
Yeah, whether, in the OHL or maybe next year making the NHL, whatever that looks like, hopefully just use them to move forward. Well, Matt, let's end off the show this week with a fan question from a longtime listener of ours and someone who's quick becoming a friend of the show, Al. Al has asked us, what would you suggest are the top 3 things the Flames need to / could do to improve and why? So before we answer that question, I think one of the questions we have to ask is, what does improve mean for the Flames? And maybe we'll both answer this on our own. I'll start here. Is improving making that playoff run? Is improving being in the top 10? I think we got to look at where the Flames think that they're going in order to answer that. But I'll give Al 3 things here that I think need to happen. To me, this year, especially because, as we talked about earlier, there's a little bit of a weaker draft class, and we don't really know what's going on in the first-round pick. I think of all the years, this is not the year for the Flames where they need to be in that bottom 10. I think the Flames need to play the best they can, as we talked about earlier, whether that's winning, losing, whatever, and let the chips fall where they may. The 3 things I think they need to improve to have that happen: 1, I think the veterans need to show up every night and put on their top effort. Blake Coleman, Nazem Kadri, guys like that who we're starting to see come around, but even guys like Sharon Govich, who I still think there's a lot left to be desired from, need to start coming out and playing the way they did last year and the way that we know that they can. All those guys had really good seasons last year. I think another one that the Flames need to do is they need to make sure that the young guys on the roster, like Zari, like Postel, like Pelletier, are getting the time they need in the positions that they need to be in. So, we all scratched our head about Postel playing center earlier. That's not going to help them develop. These guys are the future of this team, and we need to put them in the positions that they need to be in to be successful. It doesn't mean they need to be first liners, second liners to me, but you need to put them in that position to be successful. And a guy like Zari, I'm not sure that playing him at center is the best for his development, so I'm hoping they can backfill that either internally or externally so that he can go into the position he needs to be at to make him the most successful. And then the third one for me is that they're going to need to figure out their goaltending. Not that it's bad, but I think you've got 3 guys they really like in Vladar, Wolf, and Cooley. And I would hate to see a guy like Vladar leave for nothing. So I think by the trade deadline, they need to figure out what's going on with this trio and who's staying or going, and then get value for the other guy.
Yeah, and it's hard. For me, organizationally, when I look at both in terms of on paper and on ice results, the only top 6 forward the Flames have, in my opinion, is Nazem Kadri, and I view him as a second line center. I don't really at this point view any of the other players as being more than third liners.
On a good team?
On a average team or better.
I think Zari you could put into top 6.
Borderline. And I think on insert miscellaneous playoff team, say Vancouver, I think he's on the third line.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
And organizationally, you need to draft those players. You don't usually see, first liners getting gifted to teams through trade. You can on occasion get guys that are good through free agency, but that's hard because, especially when you're at the bottom end of the standings, usually free agents want to go to the good teams. So, and it's hard because even if you look at the recent drafts that the team has, there are no forward prospects that are profiling to be that first line, second line guy right now. And so organizationally, I think that the team just needs to continue being patient beyond anything and just, as you were saying, kind of go through the motions and let the chips fall where they may. It's going to be tough. And like until they can either find guys in the late rounds of the draft like they did with Gaudreau, or be bad enough to draft guys like Monahan and Tkachuk, like it's gonna take some time, and there are no quick fixes on that. Like, you need to get legitimate top line players, and we just simply don't have them in the organization. As for the rest of the team, like as you were saying, the goaltending situation needs to be figured out, but that's one of the few areas of strength that the organization has. I feel that the defense core is fine.
It's been a long time since we've said that. Goaltending is an area of strength for this organization.
I know. You pretty much need to have 34 in the crease to be able to start that conversation.
I was just about to say that. I said, I think the last time we said that, a guy wearing 34 was tending net for this team.
But, like if you look at the blue line, again, like most of the good young guys are like 18 to 20, give or take, with a couple other guys like Bustevich and Poirier that are a little older than that. But, like they're not in the NHL yet. And, like there are question marks, say, about Anderson and whether he's going to stay beyond next year. So, like, basically overall organizationally, like the Flames just lack talent. And until they can address that, either through the draft and hitting some home runs, or some trades where they get the better end of it, or free agency, like it's hard to do that in season. But
I think a lot of that is just the process for a rebuilding team. So what do you think are the three things that they need to do or could do to improve? Like, unless it is just stay the course is one of them.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, how would you say, like, if the Flames are, say, in a playoff spot, it's at the trade deadline, like the literal worst thing that they could do is spend any assets to acquire anything to help this year's edition of the team, because you're just shooting yourself in the foot for the future with this team, and like you need to just stay the course. And I feel that like last year with them being able to trade veterans off to recoup prospects and picks, like I feel that they still need to look at doing that, whether it's guys that are on long-term contracts or guys that are expiring, and just keep rotating assets basically until you can get those first line, second line guys that you need in order to be truly successful, instead of just getting by with hard work. Because hard work only gets you so far. You need talent to back it up. And if you have talent and effort, you win the Stanley Cup. But, you kind of need both of those things in order to get there. And we're severely lacking in the one.
I agree. I think that's two. Do you want to add a third, or is that it?
Honestly, that's it. Because, like, I could add a token third thing, but realistically, it's just going to be expanding on
I feel like like you're talking about not making the wrong moves at the deadline and stuff like that. I have great confidence in Conroy to do this right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like this is one of those times when, as we've seen in the past, ownership says, "Okay, we're close, let's go for it." I think ownership, management, everybody knows what needs to be done here.
Yeah. And I as much as like 4 games in the playoffs would be cool, I don't really feel like that's necessarily the best thing organizationally for this team. And like we saw when the Flames made the playoffs that one year in 14-15, that it kind of, submarined the rebuild that we were doing then. Because they then made a bunch of moves like getting Hamonic, which basically screwed the team over for a while, and, basically gutted the prospect pool, which led to the team falling off the map as soon as Gaudreau and Tkachuk left. And it's one of those that, you have to be smart and learn from your past mistakes, and that was a bad mistake by this team. And they did the same thing in 03-04. And, like, third time, like, we should actually do this the right way. And even if we're having, unexpected success this year, that's not necessarily going to carry over to next season. And, like a guy like Justin Kirkland, who played really well, he probably next year will be an AHL player. And, you can't bank on him being as good as he was, much like Coleman last year, or Kadri, or Sharangovich, as you were mentioning. Like, just because they're doing well this year is not indicative that they're going to do the same next year. And, making decisions to, improve the team in the short term might end up hurting the team significantly in the long term.
Well said. Let's leave it there. All I will say is if you want playoff hockey in Calgary, I am, at this point, pretty confident there's going to be a long playoff run for professional hockey in Calgary, but it'll be the other team, not the Calgary Flames. Based on the way this Wrangler season's going, I think they have a legitimate shot at going all the way.
I agree.
I'd honestly be surprised if they're not in the finals. So we'll get playoff hockey. We'll get the young guys getting playoff hockey. It might look a little bit different than we're expecting it to look.
Yeah, we'll be seeing a W on the jersey instead of an A. Or a C, I should say.
The W's get the W's.
Yeah.
That they can use that marketing slogan if they want. They don't need to pay me anything. Matt, let's look ahead to predictions. So we'll make a programming note here for our audience. We are recording this on the 15th. There will not be a show coming out on the week of the 22nd of December. We're taking some time off for the holidays. We will return with a show on the 29th. So we will have, at that point, covering 4 games: Boston, Ottawa, Chicago, and San Jose, and we'll hopefully put something out just for the Vegas game gets played. So we're going to take some time off for the holidays. If you want to enjoy hockey podcasts, there's plenty of them out there. Our friends at Shifts and Bucks will probably be doing something, but we will take a week off and we'll talk to everyone on the 29th. So that gives us 4 games to talk about. Before we do, let's look at how we did last week. Neither of us did all that well. I thought we'd beat Nashville and Tampa Bay, lose to Dallas and Florida. You thought we'd lose all 4.
You just got the Florida teams backwards. That's all.
Pretty much, yeah. Like I had the right non-Florida teams. I had the right number of wins. I just didn't get the right teams. Yep. So you thought we'd lose all 4, and I'm glad you were wrong.
I agree.
So 3 more home games before the holidays. The Calgary Flames play on the 17th on Tuesday, 7 p.m. in the Saddledome against the the Boston Bruins. The 19th, the Ottawa Senators come to town at 7 p.m. And then on the 21st, their last game for the holidays, a 2 p.m. start against the Blackhawks. Then they get the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th off. They'll play again on the 28th, an 8 p.m. start in San Jose. So 4 games in the docket. Matt, what are you thinking?
I just have to say that the Flames are looking very, very smart for moving on from Elias Lindholm, who I think has 17 points this season, 3 goals and 14 assists. And this is year 1 of a 7-year deal. So
you're thinking about that because you're seeing Boston on the schedule?
Yes, and he is on their team, and a lot of Bruins fans are quite angry with that.
32 games played, 3 goals, 11 assists for 14 total points.
Yes, there you go. And not very good. And apparently he has looked as bad as he did in Vancouver throughout his stay in Boston, and quietly / not quietly, a few pitchforks are out for the GM because of that signing, and it was. And
he's playing with Marchand too, which you should be able to do some good stuff there.
So
what do you think? All right, here's an interesting question. I just thought of this. What do you think the likelihood is that Calgary ends up eating that cap at some point? That we see Lindholm back here because Boston's got to dump some money.
Honestly, would you? Here's a spin off of that. Would you trade Lindholm for Huberdeau?
At this point, probably. Well, no, I wouldn't because, for Huberdeau, yeah. I was thinking contract wise. I probably would because it decreases the bad contract hit. If for no other reason, you're saving $3 million for roughly the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Right? If you were going to have $10 million riding the pine, I'd rather have $7 million riding the pine.
I agree.
So yeah, I don't know what he's got for no trade or anything.
I would not be surprised if the Flames or another team eats a part of that deal at some point. But yeah, it's just remarkable to see like how fast Lindholm kind of fell off the face of the earth.
But you're right. I think it shows that there was something there that, I mean, a lot of fans were upset when that deal was made, and that they're getting rid of him. I think the Flames won that trade for sure. I mean, they've got great value for that move, and I think it's showing that, he looked good because of who he was with.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes players just fall, out of, for no reason off the face of the earth. Like Louis Eriksson was a perfectly good player for a long time. Then he went to Vancouver and his career he was horrible. So just odd to see. That's all. And
bad news is there is a no movement on the Lindholm deal, a full no move until 29/30, and then it's a 10-team no trade. And I think by that point you wouldn't be making that deal.
Yeah. As for this week's breakdown of games, I feel that the Chicago and San Jose games should be ones that they win. So I will say that they win those two, and I'd say that they lose the other two. Because for whatever reason, we are terrible against Ottawa, and Boston is a good team still. To me, Boston's a good team, but I think that after the Florida game, they might be able to ride a bit of momentum into that Boston game. But it's going to go one of two ways. I think it's either going to be a big Flames win, or it's going to be another Tampa Bay game. Like the Flames could just get slaughtered there. I don't think this becomes like a 2-1 game. No, I agree.
I don't think you change the lineup at all from the Florida game. I think you run it with Wolf and Net and all the same guys playing, and we'll see what happens there. But that said, I think that I'm putting Boston down as a loss for the week. Really, the other three should be wins.
Yeah. Like Ottawa's, they're better this year. They're actually 3 points behind the Flames currently. So they're doing actually reasonably well. And we did play terribly in Ottawa. So that's the one that was kind of in toss-up land.
Yeah, and the other factor I'm putting in here is what I'll call the holiday season factor. On the 21st, they just checked out. And if it was a game on the 23rd or 22nd, maybe, I think there's still enough time before the holidays. It's not like you're checked out and thinking about your flight home right away. I'm going to say that they lose to Boston and they win the rest.
Okay.
My only unsure part here is sometimes after the holidays when you're on the road, the team looks like they didn't get the memo that they're back at work. Yeah. We've seen that before, too, right? That first game back, they just look terrible.
Thankfully, they're playing San Jose, so you're kind of getting an easy button where even if you're throwing the 80%, you probably still get the 2 points.
But that was the case with Nashville, too, though. And, I mean, the Flames had to come back 3 times.
Yeah. True. And it's one of those where I could see that happening. Here's a question for you. Does Devin Cooley play any of the games?
It's expected that Duehr will be back by, I think, Tuesday. So I think that Cooley gets sent down to the American League. If he's not sent down, if Duehr's not back, maybe you play Cooley in one of the games. But I think at this point, if you think Wolf is your starter, you've got to let Wolf be the starter. And I think you've got to, if Vladar's back, I think you run Wolf or if Vladar's not back, you run Vladar the whole week. If Vladar is back, you go back to the every other.
Yeah. The only game I could see them throwing Cooley in is the Chicago game, just to, if Vladar isn't back by then, just to, give Wolf the early Christmas break, so to speak, and to see Cooley up here, because I think that at some point, the Flames are going to want to see Cooley play an NHL game for them, especially with how good he's been doing in the A. So that I could see.
If you're going to do one, that's the one to do. Right? If they say, yeah, we want Cooley to play, we will either kind of keep Vladar out or Vladar's not out. I think Chicago's the one that you definitely play him in before Christmas. I don't think Vladar's going to be hurt until after, but ideally looking at these four, San Jose would be the game I'd put him in. Also because he comes from San Jose.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of a homecoming there as well. But I don't personally see Devin Cooley playing in any of them. I think you'll get if Vladar's not ready, you just run Wolf. Yeah,
and realistically, I don't think you see Cooley play until Vladar is traded at some point.
Yeah, either Vladar's traded or at the after the deadline they make something work. I think that's the only way you could see it, but nothing's going to happen with Devin Cooley unless there's a change there, because I think there's also going to be a lot of challenge and discussion if you sit one of your two goalies to put Devin Cooley in.
I agree.
And I don't know they could get away with that.
Yep.
Well, Matt, enjoy your Christmas holidays, and I will talk to you again on the 29th. And for everyone listening, I hope you have a happy holidays, and we will look ahead to 2025 together as we get close to the new year.
Merry Christmas, everybody, and as always, go Flames, go.
Fireside Chat is hosted by Dan Stevenson, co-hosted by Matt DeBorg. This episode produced and edited by Peter Marino. Fireside Chat is licensed under Creative Commons license. For full license details, visit firesidechat.ca.